Hi everyone, it's time to go through the solution for Workout Wednesday, week 38 of 2019. The challenge for the week was to build a sales comparison chart with performance indicators. So here you can see the screenshot. There were some specific requirements that I provided in here, mostly to make it dynamic so you can see it's either going to be red or green and that it is dependent on time. So I actually wrote this blog post almost a week ago, and you can see in this screenshot that it was taken on 9/17. Now, if we look at that same dashboard today, we're going to see that there's 7 days left in the month. And actually, it looks like sales is up across all of the different segments. Not quite so if we look at the specific categories, but still you get a good idea of what it is that we're trying to build. We're building out a large number, a band, if you will, a big angry number. We have a color indicator on the left that's either red or green, dependent on if sales performance month to date is above or below the same amount of time from the prior year. And then we've got a line chart / area chart combination to the right, where we've got a line showing the running total of sales month to date for this year. Dark gray showing the time elapsed for the month to date, so up to the same point in time last year. And then light gray for any time yet to come. So you could kind of think about this as a way to trend and think about how your data gets shaped. There's some interesting components to the tooltips as well. My goal is to walk you through some of the major calculations that you'll be using to construct this view. So let's go ahead and head into Tableau and start building. So we're going to start with the sample Superstore data set. With this, I always like to start with my date calculations. Now we're going to play a little bit of a game right now and pretend that today is actually a year ago. Since the Superstore data only goes through 2018, I'm actually going to write a calculation and I'm going to call it today, and it's going to be this. It's going to take the year and we're going to subtract 1 from the function called today, which returns today's date. So now if we look at this, it's just going to be today minus a year. So it's the same exact point in time, but last year. One thing you can also do is build a parameter so that you can dynamically set what that day is. But for this, we're going to keep it like this. Oftentimes it's nice to have a parameter in place if you want to test this functionality before you actually use the today function. Okay, so that's going to be our first calculation. And then I'm going to create a series of boolean calculations. Now, if you remember, if we go back to our visualization, we want the month to date for this year. We want the month to date to the same day of the month for last year. And then we want all of the same month for last year. So there's quite a few calculations we're going to build out. And I always know that I'm going to have to write these calculations in this way versus direct filtering because they all need to be in the same view, in the same viz. If they were in separate vizzes, then we could use different sheets. But when we construct the final solution, there's going to be a lot of information in the same place. So I always know that that means I'm going to have to use calculations and filter out data that way. So I will create my next calculation, which is my first Boolean. I always start these with true false. So I'm going to call this one this month current year, or this month CY. And it is going to be date trunk, the month of the order date. So we're going to truncate the order date to the month, and we're going to check to see if that is equal to the date trunk of today and the calculated field today, not today, as in the today function. Now also, because we know this is in the past, we don't want our future information, so our 2018 September information past this, to be included. We also want to make sure that the date part at the day of year level for the order date is less than or equal to the date part day of the year for today. This is just a good additional validation. This could also be helpful if you have like a data that maybe in the future that you want to avoid putting in there. This is simply an additional check to make sure that the order date or the data that we're going to be retaining is also less than the same day of the year. So this is just quite nice to make sure that although we are rolling everything back to the month, assuming there was nothing in the future, this would be fine. But if there is, we're also going to truncate that off. Okay, so that's our true false this month current year. And I'm going to build out the same ones for the other two components. So the next one will be true false this month last year, and I'm going to even put same time period. I'm going to paste this one in so you guys don't have to watch me type this out, and then I'll walk you through the logic. So this is very similar. So it's the same concept at the top. We're going to truncate our order date to the month. And now we're going to see if it's equal to that same truncated month, but instead of it just being against today, we're going to subtract a year from today. So today, last year, so today minus a year, and then we'll also roll that back to the month. And then very similarly, we're going to do the same thing. We don't have to have it be the day of the year. We can just do the day number. So it's September 24th as I'm talking. We just want to make sure that the order date day, the 24th day of the month, is less than or equal to the 24th day, which is today. And then our last calculation is going to be, again, somewhat similar here. So I'm going to call this true false this month, last year. Oops. Full month. And let me go ahead and paste that one in for you guys. Okay. So this one, it doesn't have any other conditions. It's just that top section of the last year's same time period. This one, we don't need that additional conditional of the day because it doesn't matter. We want that full September of 2017 in our case. So we don't care about the days. We want the entire month. So those are going to be the start of our initial calculations. And specifically what you'll see is we're going to use those to construct sales in this case. So I'll call this one current year sales. And this is how I'll do this if you have year over year, if you have month to date, whatever sort of calculations you have. I always start with this format of these booleans. So then if true false this month current year, then sales, there's our current year sales. Let me go ahead and bring that on to our text. And then I usually get kind of lazy, so I'll even duplicate this and edit it and do last year sales, same time. And then we would just drag this out and drop it, this guy right there. And then one more time, duplicating again, trying to save as much time as possible. And this time we'll use this calculation. And let me bring on the other two. So let's do the last year full month and then the last year same time. Okay. And let's go ahead and make those just a little bit bigger so that you can see them. Okay, so I've rearranged them on the marks card and made them a little bit bigger so that we can start comparing. So the current year sales as of today is $81,924. The last year sales, same time period, so up to the same point in time, was $63,343, and then last year for the full month is $73,410. The only other thing that we have on the initial is we've got this delta, this year-over-year, this year-over-year comparison, or this percent difference comparison. So I will go ahead and create that, and we will add that to the view, and then we'll go ahead and make our band. Okay, so then let's go ahead and say we're just going to take the difference between those two and we're going to divide it by the last year's sales at the same time. And this is going to be our percent difference. And let's go ahead and bring this on to the bottom there. Now, I like to do this all in one fell swoop. I actually have a sticky note that helps me make sure I remember this, and that's to adjust the formatting here. So I will go ahead and go in and go to default properties and set my number formatting. So I'm going to paste this in. All this is it has the up arrow if it's a positive, then it's one decimal or no decimal precision on, or to the nearest single integer on the percentages for the positive, the same for the negative, and then if it is 0, it shows itself as a dash. Okay, so now we have our percent difference calculation. So 81,000 compared to 63,000, we're up 29%. We're doing a great job. Perfect. So the next part is to really build out those big angry numbers. So all we need to do there is to bring on the segment to our rows shelf, and we'll also bring it on to our text as well. So I'm going to control drag and drop that on there. Can't really see it right now, but we're getting pretty close. The only other thing that's done here is to do the formatting. So there's some formatting here to make this number larger, to add this on. There's some labeling to have the segment value in there, and it's uppercased. And then we've got this %diff comparison on there. I'll leave those aspects to you to solve. The key for this part particularly is to have all of these different numbers, and you don't quite need this 42,000, this third number here at this time, but is to have these ready, and this is going to formulate your big angry number, the first section. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and rename this, and let's call it the bands. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to build out the color indicator over on the left. So let me go ahead and toggle this and filter. So remember, on technology, it's going to be red on because it's down compared to the prior year at the same time, and green if it's up. So let's go ahead and build that out. So I'm going to create a calculated field, and I'll call this the color indicator. And it's going to be maybe a calculation you've never seen before, or using a function you've never seen before. It's going to be the sign of the % difference. Now, if you've never seen sign before, it's over here on the left, or on the right, sorry. And it just is going to return a -1, a 1, or a 0, depending on the sign of the number. So if it's positive, it'll be a 1. If it's negative, it'll be a -1. And if it's 0, it'll be 0. So this is pretty nice because it's a really easy way to create those indicators. And you don't have to write any text calculations. It's very simple. You're doing basic, using a basic function here. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring segment back onto our row shelf. And I'm going to drag color indicator onto color, and let's see what starts to happen. Okay. So right now I've got nothing spectacular. I've got square marks, and I've got this color indicator, and it's blue because they're all positive, which makes sense if we look back at our bands. Every category is up right now. Let's go ahead and even filter that to our technology region or our technology category, because we know that we'll have a little bit of difference there. So two things that I would do here is I would actually right click and make this discrete, and then you could do the same thing here. If you did it first, you wouldn't have to do that. But this makes it so that we can access our discrete color palettes and set those different items. So let's go ahead and use our traffic light. And I think I just used the dark red and the light green for those. The only other thing I did here was I made it a bar chart. And I think I actually did it like this, and I fixed these. This is a personal preference of mine. You don't have to do it like this, but I felt like this was actually quite nice to be able to get those different lines to show up in between the indicators and to have it fill the whole space. Sometimes I find when I use the squares, they don't quite turn out how I want them to look. So this is how I would typically go about doing that. So we can click the all, and we can see that it changes. If we have technology, there it is again. There's office supplies, and so on. Okay, so that's really step 2. Those are the indicators. Now time for the fun part, which is the, we'll call it the trend line. Okay. So again, if we go back to what we originally have, we've got a lot of stuff going on. We've got the line chart showing the amount for today. It's a running total. We've got the area chart for last year, this month, up to the amount of time that's been taken. And then we also have the shaded area for the part that's remaining. Okay, so how I would start doing this is I'm going to go ahead and bring on the order date. And it's going to be just the day. And I'll even make this continuous. So I've brought on, let me do that again. I've brought on the discrete date part, which is the day. And I'm going to just turn it into a continuous field as opposed to discrete, so that we can leverage the functionality and the way this sort of looks as opposed to having it as discrete. That's going to be really important when we make the reference line. You have to have an axis to have the reference line for today. So that's my ticket and my indicator for knowing that I need for this to be continuous as opposed to discrete. Okay, so let me go ahead and bring on our current year sales, and let's go ahead and do the running total. So that looks pretty similar to what we have before. We already know that there's something going on here. This is the 24th, and it's flat after that. We'll take care of that in a minute, but we know it's doing the right thing. Then the next thing we want to do is bring on the last year's sales at the same time. And let's go ahead and make this a running total. And then last year, the full month, same thing. Let's go ahead and make it a running total. Okay, so from here, we want there to be an area chart and a line chart. So this to me means we're going to have a dual axis at some point. And I'm going to use measure name. So I'm going to take my last year full year, and I'm actually going to drag it on top of my same time last year so that we have our measure values down there and measure names is out. So you can see it off to the right. We've got the orange line for the full month, and we've got the red line for the same amount of time. Maybe if I drag that like that, you'll see it a little bit more clearly. Here's the stuff we know from last year, and here's the rest of the month. And again, you can see it flattens out because we've got that requirement that it can't go past that amount of time. Okay, so I'm going to change this measure value chart type to an area chart. And let's take a look at what happens. Let me go back. Look at my left axis here. So it goes up to about 74,000 because of the last mark there. And when I switch it, you can see that over here on the right, it goes up to 140,000. To take care of that, I can go into analysis and go to stack marks and turn it off. So now they'll be stacked on top of each other as opposed to, they won't be stacked on top of each other. They're at the same level, so they're actually layered on top of each other would maybe be the best way to talk about that. And we're getting pretty close to what I had before. The next step would be to make this a dual axis and to synchronize this as well. We've got our running total for the current year, the month to date, up to this point in time, is a blue line. We've got our area chart of up to this same day in red, and then it goes flat, and then we've got the orange, for the rest of our month going to the end. Okay. So at this point, I think we're in a good place to add on the today reference line. So to do that, we'll create a simple calculated field, and we're just going to take the date part, the day from today. And I'm going to call this the today reference line. And the reason we're going to do this is because we have just these integer numbers down here, right? And the only thing we want to pull back from this date is the day. And specifically, we want it to be an integer. We don't want it to be a day. So we'll go ahead and bring that on. Let me go to my marks card here, and I'm going to right-click drag it, and I'm just going to place it as the max so we don't do any additional aggregation. We just avoid that. And now let me go ahead and add on the reference line. And here it won't matter. You can pick minimum, maximum, average. I like to pick maximum. That's sort of a consistent thing that I do. We're going to go ahead and give it a custom label, call it today, and then you can do whatever you want in the tooltip. I think it was dotted in the final solution, but now you've got your today set. And again, this will continue to tick away with time. It's set to 24, and it's going to continue to move forward with time. Always keeping in mind whatever that today date calculated field, parameter, or just the actual function is set to depending on what you're doing. Okay, so we're getting pretty close. Let's do some additional cleanup and get to the final solution. So probably the hardest part for this challenge, if you've made it this far, is dealing with everything to the right of the dotted line. So we talked about it, when you get the running sum, the running total, once it hits today, it's going to just flatten out. Ideally, and in this solution, we want it to not exist at all, right? It just stops. That would be great. That would be fantastic. We don't want there to be any additional information to the right of it. And then very similarly, we can kind of see what's happening. We've got the area charts layered, and we've got that worked out, but we need to truncate our up to the same point in time last year, what's shown as the red right now as well. Let me go ahead and adjust the colors on the back ones, because that'll be easy to do to start. So we can at least start to see some of the same information. I'm going to make this one just darker. It's probably a little bit darker. Let me reverse these than what the final solution is, but that's okay. So we want to truncate everything to the right of this. And what's happening right now is we have information, we have data for these other amounts. We're just not summing anything else on. So it's not null, and we would want it to be null. We don't want it to be 0 necessarily because the 0 is going to show at the bottom of the chart, but we definitely want it to be null. So what we're going to do is we're going to modify and create another calculated field. So I'm just going to call this the current year sales for month running total with nulls. And it's going to be this guy. Let me go ahead and make this bigger. We're going to say if the max day order date is explicitly greater than today, so the day of today, and again, you could do date part day, you could do day today, I tend to mix and match them, then null, else, and we'll just take this calculation and throw it in here. I'm holding down my control key right now and just dropping this in there. End. Okay. Now let me go ahead and take this and replace it with this guy. Perfect. So now my line is truncated. It stops at today. If we went in and we changed it, it would go ahead and tick away. We've got our null indicator, which we can just go ahead and hide. And we're going to do the same thing. So again, I told you I'm kind of lazy. So let's go ahead and duplicate this. And let's just edit it. And we'll call it last year. And the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out. Make this bigger. And we'll just drag this guy in. And bring it on. Perfect. Okay, so now we've got a near identical solution. The only other things that are tricky about this, which I'll show you, I've got the completed workbook over here, are getting the labels to work and specifically to get the tooltips to work as you go along in time. Now, what you may guess at this point is because we have two versions of the calculation running for the running total, all we're going to do is we're going to use the original running total, the running sum calculation for each of these different values on the tooltip, but not use them for the lines or the area charts themselves. Nothing special there. That's the way you'll be able to continue to go on in time and still see that comparative. When I originally built this, those blanked out, so the sales month to date and last year month to date blanked out once you got to that point, but I felt like it was still appropriate to be able to see that additional information up to that same point. So you still get the comparative knowledge of what everything is at that point and something you could maybe build on, right? Like you could say, hey, the gap is X amount once you get to that particular day. Okay. Now, the last tricky calculation in this whole thing is probably how do you get the color of the line to be correct? And this is a good use case for an LOD. So I'm going to go ahead and create one more calculated field, and I'm going to call this line color. And this one is going to use the exclude modifier. So we're going to exclude the order date from the calculation, and we're going to use our color indicator calculation from before. Remember, that was just using that year-over-year comparison, looking at the sign if it was negative or if it was positive. So the results of this are either going to be -1, 1, or 0. So all I'm going to do is say, hey, Tableau, when you try to do this calculation, I know that I've got the order date out on detail essentially here. I know that I've separated it out by all the individual days, but go ahead and ignore that whenever you make this whenever you do this. So now when I bring on my line color calculation, and I can go ahead and just drop it onto color like that, we're going to see that it's going to work great. Let me go ahead and bring segment out so we can start seeing the different colors. And let me bring on our category filter as well. And let's filter back to technology so we can start seeing some differences again. Okay, so you can do the same thing. You could right click on this and make it discrete so that when you bring it on the first time, it will go ahead and be blue already for you so that you can access your discrete color palette. And then we can go in and we can set our -1 to red and our 1 to green. And then we can show our filter and we can just verify that it works, which looks like it's doing a great job there. We've got our colors changing. And then the last thing to do is to bring this all together into our dashboard. And of course, there's some more cleanup, but I will leave that to you. So when we build out our dashboard, I'll go ahead and make this a little bit wider. Let's make it 1100 by 700. And I'm going to go ahead and bring on a horizontal layout container, and let's bring on our 3 elements: the indicators, the bands, and the trend line. Let's get rid of all of this. And let's hide some of this stuff. And we'll hide the field labels for the rows as well. We're going to do a lot of hiding before it gets good. Let's go ahead and just stretch that out a little bit. I know this is not accurate to the final solution, but you get a good idea of where we're going. So the only other things I did was I dropped the header from here, and I turned this off as well. It's redundant. I even actually turned this off as well because I didn't feel like it was necessary because we had our different labels on. You can even come in and adjust this reference line. It's per pane. Let's make it the entire table so that we have that today label only once. We're going to have to move it to the top at the very end. And we're about 90% of the way there. Yes, you can do the formatting cleanup. So the only thing left here is to set the padding between each element to 0 and to adjust your borders and your lines, so your 0 lines and your grid lines. And when you do that, you're going to get this sort of cohesive looking dashboard that looks like it's essentially one chart when it's 3 different sheets beneath it. There's one more thing we've got to build on, and it's this dynamic title. So it actually updates to let you know how many days are left in the month. So let's go ahead and build out our dynamic title and go through one more calculation. So we've got one additional calc here, and it's called days left in month. And I'm going to just copy and paste this one in as well so that you can see it really quickly, and we can just go through what it does. Bring this over. Okay, so again, very similar date calcs that we've used throughout this whole video. Probably the only thing that's kind of a fun trick here is if you look at what I'm doing, I am taking today and I'm truncating it to the month. So today is September 24th, 2019. 2018 is our today date. So it's September 24th. I'm rolling that back to the beginning of the month. So now it's September 1, 2018. Then I'm adding a month to it. So now it's October 1, 2018. And then I'm taking the date difference in days from today and October 1. So this is great because, again, it'll continue to roll forward in time, and it makes it really easy for you to not have to worry about any of the minutiae on how to calculate it. So you just truncate that month, add on to it, and you're at the very next month every single time, and then you can just take the days difference between them. Pretty easy. And then we'll go ahead and bring that on. So I like to make my dynamic, depending on what it is, I like to make my dynamic titles using polygon sheets and actually using the title space. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. So I'm going to bring this on to detail, and I'm going to set it to the max. And nothing's happening right now. If I hover, you'll see that it's 7 days left in the month. I'm going to change this mark type to polygon, and then I'm going to go up into my title, and I'm actually just going to put this information in here. So we're going to do something like this. So we're going to say the monthly sales performance by segment, and then we're going to insert our max days left in month, days left in month. Now it's your call in terms of how you want to use the dynamic titling. I like using sheet titles for dynamic titles in specific situations, and a lot of times that is if you've got different dimensional filters, because you'll get that all, or you'll get the stacking of the values. Like you'll see the different categories. Like if you choose 2, you'll see technology and furniture, right? You'll see a few of the different groupings as opposed to it showing something different. So I like to use it for that reason. And then the other one is this is just kind of nice. Like you can see, you don't have to do anything with the tooltip. When we bring it on, it will already be set. So if I just drag that onto the top, go ahead and make this the entire view, and then you can just adjust the height appropriately. And there you have it. In just under 30 minutes, we've completed Workout Wednesday, week 38. We've done a lot of different date calculations. We've worked with table calculations. We even wrote an LOD and used that all to make a really awesome dynamic performance chart that shows us as time ticks on how sales is doing or whatever metric you may have. Hope this has been helpful.